The emergency department was crowded. When Nurse Emma Carter noticed the strange man standing near the treatment area, he looked exhausted, his long, messy hair falling around his weathered face, and his olive green jacket was dirty from whatever had brought him to the hospital. Emma was carrying medical supplies toward a patient when the man suddenly stepped behind her. Before she could turn around, his hand grabbed her shoulder and a black handgun appeared beside her head. Emma froze. The entire emergency room seemed to stop breathing. Doctors stopped beside their patients, nurses stared in shock, and several staff members moved behind beds and medical equipment. The man shouted that nobody should come closer. Emma could feel her heart pounding, but she forced herself to stay calm. She understood that struggling could put everyone in greater danger. "Tell me what you need," she said quietly. The man demanded to know where someone had been taken, but his words were confused and angry. Emma realized he was not simply trying to frighten the hospital staff. He was desperately searching for someone. She carefully asked who he was looking for. He said that a person he cared about had been brought into the hospital, but he believed the medical staff had taken that person somewhere without telling him. Emma promised to help him find the information if he stopped threatening everyone. For several tense minutes, she kept him talking while the other staff remained still. Then a doctor quietly recognized the name the man had mentioned. The person he was looking for had actually been moved to another treatment area because of a sudden medical emergency. The gunman had misunderstood what he had seen and believed the hospital was hiding something from him. Emma told him the truth without arguing. "If you want to see what is happening, you need to let me help you," she said. The man hesitated. He still held the weapon, but his anger had begun to weaken. Emma noticed an opportunity. She suggested that they move away from the crowded emergency room so the frightened patients could be protected. After a long silence, he finally agreed, slowly. He ordered everyone to stay back and forced Emma to walk with him toward the secured treatment corridor. The emergency room was no longer the only danger. Now Emma had to find a way to keep the man calm while moving through the hospital without allowing the situation to become even more dangerous. Emma walked slowly down the hospital corridor with the gunman close behind her. The sounds of the emergency department faded as they moved toward the treatment area. Nurses watched from doorways, but Emma kept her eyes forward. She knew that if the man believed security was closing in, he might panic. She continued talking to him, asking questions about the person he was searching for. He finally admitted that he had received a phone call telling him that his loved one might not survive. He had rushed to the hospital, but when he arrived, he could not find anyone who could immediately explain what was happening. Fear had taken over. He had entered the emergency department carrying the weapon because he believed it was the only way anyone would listen. Emma told him that his fear was understandable, but his actions had placed innocent people in danger. Before he could answer, they reached the treatment corridor. A doctor approached from the opposite direction and quietly told Emma that the patient was alive but still receiving urgent treatment. The gunman demanded to see the patient immediately. Emma explained that he could not enter while doctors were working, but she could bring him accurate information. Suddenly, an alarm sounded from a nearby room. Medical staff rushed through the corridor. The gunman panicked and pulled Emma backward. "They're taking him away," he shouted. Emma quickly realized that the alarm had nothing to do with his loved one. A patient in another room had suffered a medical emergency. She explained this before his fear could turn into another violent reaction. Her words worked, but the situation had become more unstable. Security officers were now quietly approaching from a distant corridor. Emma noticed them before the gunman did. She subtly shook her head, signaling them to wait. Then she told the man that if he truly wanted to see his loved one, he needed to put the weapon down first. He refused. Emma didn't argue. Instead, she asked him to look through the small window of the treatment room. He could see doctors working and finally realized that nobody was abandoning the patient. His grip on the gun loosened. Emma took another careful step away from him. "You came here because you wanted to save someone," she said. "Don't turn yourself into another person who needs saving." The man's eyes filled with tears. For the first time, he lowered the weapon completely. Emma slowly moved toward the security team. But before anyone could reach him, he suddenly dropped the gun onto the floor. The weapon struck the hospital floor, and the sound echoed through the corridor. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then security officers quickly stepped forward and safely restrained the man. Emma immediately moved away and was taken to a secure area where another nurse checked her. Her hands were shaking, but she was unharmed. The man was taken into custody without anyone being injured. Yet the story was not finished. Emma asked about the patient he had been searching for. The doctor told her that the patient was still alive and that the treatment had gone as planned. Emma later learned that the man had misunderstood the situation because of a rushed phone call and his own fear. He had believed the worst before anyone had been able to explain the truth. When Emma was finally allowed to see him from a safe distance, he looked completely different from the angry man who had held a gun beside her head. He looked exhausted and ashamed. He told her that he had never intended to hurt her. Emma answered that intentions were not enough when someone was holding a weapon in a hospital. He lowered his eyes and admitted that fear had made him believe violence was the only way to be heard. Emma told him that the moment he put the gun down was the first moment he had truly protected the person he cared about. Meanwhile, the emergency department slowly returned to normal. Nurses went back to their patients. Doctors continued their work. Families were reunited with loved ones. The frightened staff who had witnessed the incident began talking quietly about how close everything had come to disaster. Emma returned to the treatment area later that evening. She looked at the same hospital corridor, where the confrontation had ended, and remembered every moment. She had been terrified, but she had refused to let fear make her careless. Instead of fighting the gunman, she had kept him moving toward a safer decision. Instead of allowing the story to end in violence, she had given him a way to surrender. Before finishing her shift, Emma checked on the patient he had come looking for. The patient was stable, and the doctors were hopeful about the recovery. Emma smiled with relief. She knew the night would remain in her memory for a long time, but she also knew it had taught everyone something important. A dangerous situation can change from one moment to the next, and sometimes the difference between tragedy and survival is a person who stays calm long enough to make the next right decision. Emma adjusted her stethoscope, returned to her patients, and continued her work as the emergency department carried on around her. The end.